time. It's time for the Billy Flynn Experience.
Thank you so much for joining me today for another Billy Flint Experience. I am your host, Billy Flint, and you are coming live here from Germany on a very nice sunny Sunday afternoon. It's kind of nice to have nice spring weather for a change. It's been weather's been really changing up here. Pretty much feel like it has been all over the world. Crazy time we're living in. Hope everyone is doing good today. We're gonna actually just kind of jump right into the subject. Of course, as the title of today's show is The Beautiful, Complex, and Twisted Contradictions of Mr. Kevin Samuels. Actually, that was supposed to have been a more loud applause. I guess I didn't have the volume up. Well, we're gonna move right into what we're talking about today. Yeah, this is about one of YouTube's premier content creators. Goes by the name of Kevin Samuels. And he transitioned. He died a few days ago. And I wanted to wait for all of the speculations and conspiracy theories, the hate. Oh, it's a lot of hate. And for those who don't know who Kevin Samuels is, for my European audience and listeners and listeners here in Germany, Kevin Samuels, again, was a content creator within the YouTube site. And he led, since he became popular, I guess back in 2017, early part of 2017 or late part of 2016, he became more of a, I want to say a viral, because he wasn't quite viral yet, but he was becoming well known on certain social media platforms, and particularly YouTube. But he's been around for close to 10 years, or maybe a little more than 10 years. But as we all know how this type of platform goes, you have to do it for quite some time in order for your name to get recognized or even noticed. So a lot of people have been grinding on this platform as content creators and providing entertainment or information other than what's on the main media, or main media sources. But anyways, as I was saying, Kevin Samuels has become very, very viral over the past 4 days. 3 to 4 days. And I wanted to wait again for all the hate and conspiracy theories to drop down before I present what I get or what I was able to receive from what Kevin Samuels provided for people. First off, I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but for the most part, I understood where he was coming from, because as a man, I've experienced a lot of events and situations in which, from what he was talking about, and that is mainly about relationships between men and women, particularly black men and black women in the United States. So my whole thing about it is that as I look back, because I have always been an Advent reader, and I've always been interested in human behavior and from different cultures and how people relate to one another. So I've always been interested in that, and I've always been an Advent reader, and studying just mainly how people or what is known as the human condition. So I just want to say, I even though I didn't agree with a lot of what Kevin Samuels, what he was providing as far as information, but again, I can understand it and I identify with some of it. Some of it is very true. But my thing is that Kevin Samuels he wasn't the only one. He's not the first individual that was addressing the situations or the relations between black men and black women in the United States. And then for me personally, I wanted to stay away from watching what other content creators on YouTube was uploading and providing and presenting to their listeners. I didn't want to cloud my judgment or even cloud from what I was thinking before I decided to write for this podcast, write this show for this podcast. So I started thinking, and I was like, okay, I remember, close to 30 years ago, I remember reading a book, and this is the early 90s, I think 1992. It was a book by an author. Her name is Shahrazad Ali. It would be great if you Google it, or better yet, if you just pick up her book. She wrote a book called, let me make sure I get this right, The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman. And again, this was close to 30 years ago. Maybe it was 30, maybe a little more than 30 years ago, but it's close to 30 years ago. At a time where black consciousness, or within the black conscious movement, it was just starting. It was just starting, picking up pace, picking up speed. I mean, during that time, even with hip hop, there was a lot of conscious hip hop acts like Public Enemy, KRS-One, Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubian. So there was a black conscious movement taking place. And at the same time, this book dropped. And it created havoc. And at the time, there was no internet. There was no social media sites. There were talk shows. And I remember first seeing Shahrazad Ali and I forgot what it was. Something. It was a talk show in Detroit, Michigan, where I used to live. So on this talk show, she started talking about this book, and I was watching it, and it blew my mind. I was just like, I don't know. I was drawn. I was a young age, but still, what she was saying, I was drawn to the message, what she was presenting to the audience, and what was in her book. So it made me go out and buy the book. Again, I'm kind of young at this time, but again, I've always been an avid reader. So I purchased her book and read it, and it just blew my mind of what it was saying. And that's pretty much where it started for me, because I never forgot that book. I think I read it maybe 2 more times, but later on, like after college, or, you know, just later on in my life, I decided to just read it a couple more times. But what I wanted to say was make a comparison. This is what I wanted to do. I want to make a comparison to Shahrazad Ali and Kevin Samuels. Now, the whole thing with Kevin, his name is like really twisting my tongue. Kevin Samuels, his main diatribe and what he was presenting was the relationships between black man and black woman, and how society, and he wasn't blaming society, but just a lot of different elements within our society that causes a split between communities, between races, between religions. That's a well-known fact. And within the microcosm of the black community, what other cultures don't understand and possibly don't even know is that the black man's relations with the black woman, and of course right now, I guess worldwide, everyone is having problems. Everyone is going through their drama, regardless of what race or what religion or what country you come from. It just seems that now we're literally in a global community where it's like everybody is going through some type of drama. But again, this is 30 years ago, so things were a lot different during that time. But what Kevin Samuels was talking about was the relationship between black man and black women. And that caused a division, or even a further division, because you had people that either liked Kevin Samuels or didn't like Kevin Samuels. There was no middle ground. It was either you vibe to what he was talking about or you didn't. Regardless of the fact whether you listened to what he was actually saying, which a lot of people did, and they didn't listen to anything. They maybe watched a few of his podcasts on YouTube, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and by that, different people are going to drop in their opinions, and they're going to walk away with their own what they've drawn from what he was, whatever the podcast and what he was talking about, what it was about. So you have people injecting their own opinions, whether or not they've watched it fully or whether they watched it at all. But it's basically became a public forum to whether you like Kevin Samuels or you didn't. So based on what his synopsis was, most black women didn't vibe to what he was talking about or what he presented. from his research and experiences. But then again, the crazy part is that you had another aspect of a larger sector of black women that after a period of time actually understood what he was talking about. And it's based all out of his theory on high value man and what a high value man is. But we're going to get to that later. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to just play this. And I want you to listen to. This is Shahrazad Ali. It's a bit long, but just check it out. Listen to it. And then you will see the comparisons to what she was talking about. Again, this is 30 years ago. To what she was talking about based on her book, The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman. Based on her book and her research, it's parallel to what Kevin Samuels was talking about before he died. So what I'm going to do is just check this out.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Vibrations. I'm Raven Geary. Today on our program, one of the hottest properties making the talk show circuit, Shahrazad Ali. An established writer indeed, Miss Ali is best known as the author of The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman. A very controversial and, if I may say so, a very critical view of life of today's black woman. She joins us today in our studio, and of course we'd like to welcome you today to Vibrations.
Well, thank you, Raven, for inviting me.
Basically, it's your premise that the black woman is out of sync with the natural order of things. Can you explain that?
Well, it's a very sensitive subject, and certainly I believe that I have tried to approach it from a very sensitive angle. What I have actually said is that the black woman's disrespect and rebellion against the leadership and the authority of the black man is a direct cause of the breakdown in the black family structure. It's not an attack on us as black women. It's just saying that in the breakdown of any relationship, both parties have to take responsibility. And as black women, we have been protected and insulated from any kind of examination about what our share of the responsibility is in the breakdown of the black family. My book represents the first platform, certainly, that the black man has ever had to air his grievances about the black woman, because no one would ever listen to him. They have only listened to us.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book itself? What brought you to this point of having to sit down and use your pen to write this book?
Well, actually, it was my first book. In 1985, I authored How Not to Eat Pork or Life Without the Pig. And at that time, I was going around doing what I was calling Get Off That Hog lectures. And during my travels, I noted that I would take the microscope and show people how you can't kill the trichina worm in pork by cooking it. Heat was not destroying the worm, and I would show them, the difference, and demonstrate how FDA was now using radiation to try to kill the worms in pork because cooking was not working, which is what we had always been told. And during that time, a lot of black men were in agreement to get off eating pork. They wanted to change their eating habits, and they were happy to find out some information that might possibly save their lives. But it was black women who were the most adamant, who refused to change meal planning techniques, seasoning food, cooking techniques. And so I said, it's interesting. I said, if we are refusing to provide the black man with the proper physical food when we know that food is what sustains life, then what else are we withholding from him? Possibly there are some other areas, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, that we are affecting his behavior by what we do or what we withhold and refuse to give. And that led me to try to find out. We've always heard that the black man leaves the black family, abandons his woman and children, won't take care of the children, won't work, stays out all night, turns into a drunk, takes drugs. We've heard a lot of negative things. Most of them are true. But I wanted to find out what happens before he gets to that point. What leads up to the breakdown? We've never gone back to try to find out what happens in the relationship between the black man and a black woman that makes him go off and do all of these bad things. To assume that this is just normal, natural behavior for black men would be to assume that he is naturally bad. And I do not believe that the man that God gave to us as a mate is a naturally bad person. And so I wanted to try to examine what goes on with him. What's his side of the story?
Did a black man ask you to write this book?
Oh, no, certainly not. I think they were just as surprised as black women. Many of them approached the title of the book with a little apprehension because they have not had a champion. We have never had a black woman who actually stood up and said, I'm standing up for the black man's side of the story. We know what our side is, and both sides are true. We have done some very dreadful things to each other, and I don't exonerate black men, which is kind of a misconception that people have. I just say that we know his side. What about our side? And we do have a side. We have adopted some wrong standards. We are judging our men many times by the wrong value system. We are using his children sometimes against him. We have been told that the only benefit that a black man provides in a home is money, and if he does not give us money to take care of those kinds of financial provisions, that he has no value. And what my research has proven to me is that a black man, any man in any home, provides much more than financial support. The man provides guidance, instruction, discipline for the children, which we sorely need in our black homes. He provides gratification, fulfillment, protection. I mean, there are so many other values, and these values are the ones that are missing in our children today, which is why many black children are in the street, out of control themselves, disrespectful, don't have any regard for anyone. And most of us are scared of them, and everybody else is, because nobody has a way into them to try to gain any control over them. So I maintain that a return to traditional family values, certain clearly defined gender responsibilities for black men and black women in running a home and a relationship will help us to produce a better child. And if we produce a better child, certainly we'll have a better future and a better nation.
You say black women, and I quote you as saying, nag, 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 and that we are essentially responsible for pushing our men away by doing so.
A lot of times we take a position because of our own emotional mechanisms. We harass our men too much. We nag our men too much, and we keep his mind and his head so bundled up and bogged down with all of our personal idiosyncrasies about our day-to-day personal relationship with him that a lot of times we don't free his mind up to go out and to plan sanely for our future and for the future of our children. Many of them come to us every day, and they almost have to do a wind test. They don't know what's going on. They don't know who they're going to meet because we have a lot of reactions. We tend to think as black women that a successful relationship and one where we're happy is one where everything goes our way. And the first time it goes another kind of a way, then we go into hell, turmoil in our brain, and we start deciding, oh, I've got terrible problems with this man. He won't do what I want him to do. When our men have a side.
Let me give that side according to Scheherazade Ali, okay? You say in your book,
okay, let's get
and I'm quoting
Come
you,
on.
okay? The black man in America is the only male on earth, including every continent, who is disrespected by the women in his nation.
That's true.
This situation does not exist anyplace else among the billions of people inhabiting our planet except here in America.
That's right.
The other black men, the yellow men, the red men, the brown men, and the white men are all honored and respected by their respective nations. All other women recognize and accept that the man is the authority, the ruler, and the leader. Only here in the United States, in the black nation, scattered throughout the United States, is the black man neglected. That's pretty powerful.
And it's absolutely true. We have been displaced. A lot of us don't really understand what slavery actually did to us and how much psychological trauma it did to us regarding what our proper roles are with each other, what our responsibilities are as man and woman in our various communities and relationships. We have never been debriefed from slavery. Not really. We have just, we know we had that history, but we don't know how it affected us. We don't know how much of our actual culture we lost. How much of our ideas were taken from us. We know that our religion was taken from us. We know that our names were taken from us. But we don't know how many other standards of day-to-day life have been removed. And while we have adopted the American way of doing things, they have not worked for us because we have a very special situation. We are not the same as everyone else. And a lot of the people who want us to pretend that slavery didn't exist or to forget about it, they've never been a slave. So they don't know what we're going through. They don't know what this has done to us. It has made us as black women insecure.
Why not? If that's true, why not take up for us? Why not write something that says
we've had everybody to take up for us, and we've always had books about black women. how great and how strong we are. And we are that. I'm just saying that we have used our strength in the wrong direction. We have used it against our men instead of standing up for them. And if we start to support our men and to speak a good word for him publicly, then so many people won't be able to come against him and tear him down. And he won't have to feel so frustrated. And he won't be outside away from us looking for peace of mind with women of other nationalities, because we actually want our own black man. We need him back in our homes, and we want to have one. We're just living in a culture where they're trying to convince us that not only do we not need a man, but there's some other options to having one. And those options mainly are celibacy or lesbianism.
There's an old saying that says, charity begins at home and spreads abroad. And
Absolutely.
in your book you say that we are not bringing up our daughters and our sons in a correct manner to respect their fathers.
No, we're not. Unfortunately, as I say, since money has been used as the measure, many times if a black man does not have money to give us, we won't even let him see his children. We won't let him spend any time with it because he does not give us whatever the child support is. And I'm not saying that we don't need money to raise a child, but I try to explain to black women that raising a child consists of much more than feeding, clothing, and sheltering it. That's maintaining one. To raise one, you need a return of the parental coalition of the father and the mother to put the proper values into the child. Many of our boys, when we raise them alone, they grow up with the female emotional mechanism. They are suspicious, they are doubtful, they're disrespectful of womanhood, they are bitchy, they can't make a decision. And many of our girls who grow up in a home where there's no man present, they go out into the world and try to mate. They don't have any idea how to live with a man day to day, how to prepare a proper meal, how to be a mother, how to just be in love in the home. Most of what our people and our children especially have learned about how you have a relationship, they learned off of television. And television doesn't represent our needs. And so a lot of the confusion has come, from outside agencies that we have not recognized just how detrimental it has been to us as a people.
You say that the black woman would like to be a clone of the white woman.
Many of us, yes. That's unfortunate.
How do you see that?
Well, that's something that was almost accidental, I'd have to say. See, the white woman has been the only mentor that we have had of a female. We've seen her every day of our life on television, every magazine, every newspaper, every commercial. It's just been her face, her body, her image, whatever it has been in front of us. And so today we have the results of that. We have black women who are trying to dye their hair blonde, who are wearing blue and green contacts in their eyes, who wear tons and tons of layers of makeup, who have changed their voice, who have hair weaves so they can have flowing long hair blowing in the wind, like Brooke Shields or somebody, And so that's been an accident. And as a result of us doing that, we have also adopted the women's liberation movement goals of wanting to be liberated from the man and have some kind of pseudo-equality, when while that may be true of the white woman and her plight with the white man, that's not really the black woman's business, because we haven't been under the control of the black man for over 500 years. So what do we have to be liberated from him from?
Is there something wrong with trying to make yourself look better or more appealing?
Well, it depends on what standard you're using as being the goal of looking better. If we think to look better is to put on a ton of makeup and have blue eyes, then there's something wrong with that. But if we think that to look better is to certainly get a better spirit in our heart and to work every day to become a better wife, a better mother, better friend, better sister, then those values and attributes alone will make us more beautiful than we are now.
How do you feel about the fact that many people accuse you of wanting to see the black woman at a point of submission? Is that where you want to see a black woman in the 1990s?
Well, it depends on how you define submission. Those words have a tendency to have a negative connotation for us because of how they were used against us during slavery and what we connect them to. But actually, the kind of submission that I'm referring to just means cooperation and agreement. I don't think that anybody could say that I represent a woman who is subjugated in any kind of way. I don't think that anybody could say that my personality sounds like some man has me somewhere crawling around on the ground or walking 10 paces behind him. So I'm not representing that. I'm representing strength. I'm saying that we have a lot of power. We have power to make heaven and hell for our men. And I'm saying let's try making heaven. Let's try to build him up. If a man has his woman behind him, he will believe he can do anything. And all we need to do is to get our men to believe that they can do anything. And he'll be able to, do much better than he's doing now and come out of the pitiful condition he's in. As I said, I'm not exonerating him. I'm just saying that all of that strength that we have, let's use it in a more positive way instead of just going for self. nobody told us that all of that being my own person and I'm independent would lead to separation and loneliness. But that's what we had to trade for that. In order to have certain kinds of success, we had to give up the man because we can't find a man who will compete with us on that level. As I said, we say he can't handle us, or he's intimidated by the fact I make more money than him. I think that by judging our men on how much money he makes, we have lost a lot of good men. Because as black women, if we decide that all of us are going to just determine whether or not we're going to have a man based on how much money he makes, then none of us have no man.
Let's go back to the book for just a moment. According to you, there are 3 types of black women.
Yeah, they overlap a little bit.
Can you define it just very briefly for us?
Well, we have, I kind of number them, I think, as 1, 2, and 3, and I would call them lower class, middle level, and so-called upper class, and we certainly have to acknowledge that we have those levels in our society. We see them every day. That is not a put down to recognize that we have a lower class woman who perhaps lives on the street, who is an alcoholic, a bum, who is outdoors, who is subject to abject poverty as because of a lack of education and proper training and personal hygiene and other kinds of information. She exists, and we need to reach her and try to raise her up differently because many of these women have children. And we have to be responsible for them. We have the mid-class women who are the number 2s, and they're kind of average. They try to do better than the lower level. And then, of course, we have the number 3 class, which is the so-called successful, black woman who is tripping about the fact that she generally has a big job and a credit card or something,
But don't you want to see black women accomplish something?
Yes, I absolutely do. But if we can't accomplish saving our race, then we have not made an accomplishment. We are looking at our man become endangered. He's already endangered. Over 60% of us are single, widowed, separated, or divorced as of last year. And so we're not together. And there is one monolith in the black community, Raven. If we don't reproduce children, then our nation, our race is going to die out here. And so we sometimes tend to look at black men and say, yeah, they're in this bad condition, and we act like they're going to die out and we're going to live on. But that's not the way it's going to go. If the black man dies, all of us are going to die because he actually is the backbone of our nation. We can't produce a baby by ourselves, and going into other nationalities still just erases, our nation. And I'm trying to get us not to do that.
Scheherazade, there are a lot of women out there who think, you don't like us, you don't like black women.
Oh, yes, I do. I love black women. I'm a black woman myself, and I got 5 daughters and 4 sisters, so that would, be ridiculous of anybody to assume that. As I said, we have just never had anybody challenge us on our behavior. We've never had anybody to say, well, let's look at what we do. We know what he does, and he's wrong in a lot of what he does. But his wrongness, his guilt, does not ensure our innocence. We have a share in the problems that we have in the black community. And just because we are dressed up and have a job does not mean that we don't practice some aberrant behaviors that end up infecting our homes and breaking up our relationships with our men and helping to hold him down. That's all I'm saying. So everyone can look at themselves. Every man can look at his own woman. This book has brought a lot of people together. This book has reunited a lot of couples who now understand what happened in their relationship. It's required reading in 15 historically black colleges and 10 white colleges. Everyone must study what slavery did to the black woman. We have never looked at it as an independent study. Analyzing the options available to the black man when the black woman's mouth, verbal abuse has been proven to be just as violent and harmful as physical abuse. When her mouth becomes uncontrollably disrespectful, they total only a few. He can walk away from her, leave the house, get drunk. We know men do that. He can go to his other woman and complain. He can quit the relationship, leave the woman. He can try to argue back and lose. Nobody can out-argue us, okay? Or he can seek counseling or sympathy from friends. Now, those are the only options any man has when a woman is running off at the mouth to him. A family is more than a woman and children. A family is a father and a mother and children.
You cannot deny, however, that there are many black women who have decided for whatever reason to go it alone and are successful in raising children who are not on
they're not
drugs.
Successful.
Yes, wait. Let me just make my point now. Who are sending their children to college,
that's not
who
success.
run a good home.
I keep trying to explain that. Feeding and clothing and raising a child and making sure it's not on drugs and it goes to college, that doesn't guarantee that child any emotional success in their relationships in life. That just means they may be able to get a job. See, we have to look at even what the success standard is that we're talking about. That's not necessarily success. That doesn't guarantee us success. If we can raise up an emotionally stable child, one who knows how to carry on our black nation, who knows how to be a good mother, and still perhaps contribute to the outside community, if we can raise up fathers who take responsibility for their children and who know that their presence in the home is a needed one if we are to survive, there are a lot of other things more important than us just getting a college education and a job. That does not guarantee the success of a nation. That guarantees a personal financial success, which is not the only thing that we need to revive our black nation.
What are some words of advice or wisdom or courting according to Scheherazade Ali?
Just the only wisdom that I can leave you is the information that's already recorded in most of our holy books. And that's that God made the man and woman to be together in unity. And so it is impossible for us as black women to attend church and say that we love and worship God when we disrespect our own man, who is in the image of God, because God is a man. And our men may be the closest representative of that kind of masculinity of God that we ever meet. And that we should stop using our children to punish our men. We should stop disrespecting our men in front of our children. Sometimes we talk badly about them. It makes the child get a different idea about the father just because of our personal relationship. And that we should start trying to be a little bit more patient, tolerant, and courteous. And those are some attributes that we have kind of gotten away from because we're on this speed thing of trying to make a living. And as I said, I'm not saying that he's right, but if we become better women, he's got to become a better man.
Scheherazade Ali, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting
this. I know your people are going to love this. Nobody ever gets to hear me talk this much. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Vibrations.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Again, as you see, that was Scheherazade Ali. And again, that was 30 years ago when she did an interview on a television show. I think that was like 1992. But as you see, the message is the same. She's a woman. Kevin Samuels is a man. Almost two different generations. Like what, 2 decades later? And the message is the same. And that's what really stuck with me when I started, remembering during a time when I was young. It's over 30 years ago. And the narrative is still the same. So my whole thing is that the people, again, you have two different sides. You have the people that either understood what Kevin Samuels was saying or disagreed based on what other people were saying or based on limited understanding of the message in which he was presenting. And again, that's where the contradiction of Kevin Samuels come in. Okay, so the situation was, yes, he presented his content and it was entertaining. It was entertaining so much based on how he was talking to his callers. And again, all of them were women. But the crazy part about it is that they kept calling. They kept wanting to be a part of his experience. So even though there was a message in what he was saying, it was more entertaining from many of his content that I watched on YouTube. It was entertaining. It was funny. But it was true. A lot of it was truth. But again, you have two different sides. You have whether you like him or you don't. And that's where the contradiction that I seen as I started really thinking about it and doing more research on it. There is a contradiction, because this whole concept of high value man is that whole concept is a misnomer. It makes no sense. Because ethics, morals, principles have nothing to do with money. I mean, hell, even the whole notion of success. A lot of people want to branch that with financial gain or material objects. But it has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing to do with what this quote unquote high value male or high value man is, based on his concept of it and how he presented it to his listeners, or anybody who was listening, or anybody who was curious enough to know, or curious enough to want to know, who this polarizing figure of a man, who is this guy? Who was he? And that's when everything started going viral. But again, the contradiction comes in to me, and it's on the internet. You can go to there's a YouTube page, No Jumper. There is a No Jumper interview of Kevin Samuels in which he vehemently, no, take that back. He said verbatim, he said that there's nothing wrong with being with, hookers, escorts, whatever you want to call them. He called them escorts, but prostitutes, hookers, whatever. You're paying for their service. You're paying for their company. And to me, a high, quote unquote, a high value man wouldn't have to do that. I mean, if you want to look at it realistically, high value man has morals and ethics and principles that he stands by. He lives at a higher code. Not to say anything is wrong with buying prostitutes or whatever, hookers or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're into, there's nothing wrong with it. You do you. But I found the contradiction in how he presented his message. And when you present your message at such a high level, you have to be squeaky clean. To me, that's how I look at it. And I didn't realize all this until I'm sitting there thinking, I'm looking at, after the news broke that he passed, that he died, I'm sitting there thinking about, wow, let me go check out some of the videos that I used to watch. So I'm watching them, and again, based on what other people were saying, the news wasn't finite. The news that broke, it wasn't confirmed. It wasn't clear. But then after it became clear that he did, in fact, died, the speculations came to, what did he die of or from? And a few messy media outlets posted that it was a nurse that he got involved with, and they spent the night. The next day he wasn't feeling well and he collapsed. And then there was another website that posted, I think it was the Shade Room, or I believe it was a Shade Room, that post the cocaine and fentanyl. Allegedly, he was, on drugs. when he was with this particular woman the last time, that he was alive. So again, that's where I find the contradiction, because he preached to women and other men about being a high value man, which is fine. But to me, it has less to do with material objects and what's in your bank account, based on how you see yourself as a human being, as how you see yourself as a man, at the higher standards. The higher standards. To me, that's what a high value man is. So, again, that's where I found the contradiction. But within that contradictions, again, what he presented was the truth. That we as a people are living in a delusion, a reality based on delusions, based on basically what we've been told generation by generation by generation. It's almost like we all need therapy. But because of the fact that we live in a world now where everything is on the internet, everything is on the social media sites, that's how we live our reality. That's where people are basing their own existence on. Either living vicariously through people that they're following, or by creating a lie within their own reality. But pretty much that's what Kevin Samuels was about. It was about telling the truth. It was about, again, based on the African American community in America, and how the relations between black men and black women have basically all, to lack of better words, collapsed completely. So he was trying to put truth and reality to his listeners, which mainly were women. And on the flip side of that, those are the most of his detractors are women. And it's gotten ugly and ugly and ugly, right down to the point where people are applauding his death. And that's why I think he's such a polarizing figure, because he's almost as if he's hated like he was a dictator of a country. I mean, it's not funny, but when I look at it, that's what I think. That he was that bad of a man that people would actually applaud his death. And that to me clearly shows, again, a lot of people need therapy. Because a lot of us, the majority of us, are carrying around some type of trauma. Well, that's all that I have on it. The subject of Mr. Kevin Samuels, rest in peace. And I've often said, before I go, I've often said that from one of my favorite comedians who passed, goes by the name of Patrice O'Neal. If you've never heard of him, he's on YouTube. Again, Patrice O'Neal was another polarizing figure. So polarizing that his comedy was based on truth. And he was, again, there were people who liked his comedy, and then there was people who didn't like it. And a lot of his comedy was based on man and women, not only black men and black women, but men and women and how men and women relate to each other. And how everything in the society, the laws pertaining to marriage, or the marriage laws, or the child laws, that everything sides with the woman. So Patrice O'Neal had a unique way of telling stories based on truth, but it was comedy. But at the same time, it was funny. And I would say that even though Kevin Samuels has transitioned, has passed on, I guarantee he is going to become a cult figure. Bigger now than even he was before he passed. Because as long as we have his channel on YouTube and his tweets, and I'm pretty much sure people are pulling all of this off the YouTube just in case they try to take his channel down, which I think is a very, very good idea. If you have the apps or the technology that you can actually pull this stuff from YouTube and store it on an external drive, I think that's what we should do, because I wouldn't doubt it if something like that happened. I wouldn't be surprised. But nonetheless, Kevin Samuels will no doubt become a cult figure. One of the greats. I guarantee it. But again, rest in peace, Kevin Samuels. He was a good guy. Very polarizing. Very cantankerous. But, his content was truth. And part entertainment. And I think that's what it is. That's what it's about. That's what it is. So it is what it is. So again, thank you so much for listening. Wish everyone a wonderful weekend and a wonderful start of a new week. Look forward to being with you again. Take care of yourselves. Stay blessed.